Well, welcome. Today, Lauren and Christine and I are going to be talking about sun transits 15 and 52. We're going to explore around, see what we can find, what we can learn, and what we can play with. But first, we're going to talk a little bit about coming out of gate 12 and sort of experiences around, because I was sharing before we started about sense of stuckness that showed up. Um, It's like when we were talking last time. And so I've been in this place of our place being for sale for a couple of months now. And it's something I thought would have been done and I'd be moving on by now. But it's here and it's stuck, but I'm not being stuck. It's like life is going on and it's just part of life. So the the other thing I was thinking about the gate 12 was that the gift was discernment. And I was thinking about how important that is coming into the next two gates. The that ability to like pay attention to what's going on and cut through all the drama and say, like, what's really happening here? And when I was preparing for these next two gates, it was really showing that's going to be important.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe lead us into that, Christine.
Yeah, thanks. I think about gate 12 too as this discernment and also like trust in divine timing, right? And so for your particular situation, this idea that, we all have things that we want to move when we want them to move. And that doesn't always actually align with what the correct timing is, right? And so it was just this opportunity this past week, I think, to really kind of examine that and look at those places where we're pushing or hoping or expecting, right, things to be a certain way when in reality we all know that we only have so much agency, right? And so that being able to step back and trust this timing, that it's correct and it will be correct even if we ourselves are impatient for it. So um but yeah, so we're stepping in, out of that energy of just like paying attention to discerning what's going on around us, where we might be stuck, and where the stuckness might have a purpose, right? It might just not be the right time, right? Even though it feels like it's the right time for us. And we're stepping into this gate 15 tomorrow, which is in human design is called the gate of extremes, right? And so it is actually a really beautiful gate in human design. It is in our identity center. It is a love, what we call a love gate. Each of the gates in our identity have a particular kind of love that they exhibit. And the gate 15 is the love for humanity, right? For everything in that's humanly possible. All the expressions, all the possible extremes of what can be represented by humans. And so inside this energy is a real kind of acceptance of the full spectrum of life, right? Which I find to be quite lovely and beautiful. I happen to live with somebody who has this gate and this channel, and so I've had a lot of opportunity to really pay attention to it. And that high expression of the ability to love everybody and everything about them is really beautiful, but it also has a very it has a hard time, I think, finding its own rhythm and flow in the world. And that is what's trying to be worked on in this energy, in this time period, right? Like our ability to learn our own rhythms, stick to our own rhythms, and not be caught in between, caught up in extreme behavior, essentially, right? Like with my son, like some days he'll sleep for 10 hours a night for 3 or 4 days in a row, and then he won't sleep for 4 days, I mean, I can't quite figure it out. And this has always been true for him, right? It's really hard for him to find a predictable, natural rhythm. And so we may experience that, all of us, ourselves, just feeling this more extreme, push in our own lives and in the world around us. So that would be like my number one thing I would be paying attention to in this particular time frame.
It's interesting. There's something that you just brought up in like it was knowing someone that has one of the gates, even because, well, like we've talked about before, is like sometimes we can't really identify if
Mm,
it isn't primary and in our profiles. And with this, like my son has both gates
mhm.
today, and it's made it much to go in deeper and to be able to get a feel for what's going on. And then, like you said, that being able to go, oh, that's what's going on, even though I don't get it at all.
Yeah. You know what? I think my son has this gate as well. I'm I'm pretty sure. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? Coming, I'm listening to you, Christine, and I'm looking at the I Ching translation, Hillary's in particular, talking about returning to a state of balance, which is the same thing. And I'm also really touched that this gate shows up right as we're coming into summer solstice. And so we're moving in, with to away from these long bright days in towards darkness, but we're at that midpoint, right, of the longest day of the year, and then and so that's an extreme. And then how do we moderate that? One of the questions that Hillary Barrett asks in her translation is, how do you return to a state of balance, and what is simple? And I love that, because balance is the simplest expression when something is in balance. And that's an interesting thing to look at in our own lives. But I think we have the greatest teacher right outside our doors, is in nature, of watching how things come in balance. It can rain and rain and rain, but the earth absorbs it up and it takes care of that water and it moves it to where it needs it. So we have systems already out there. We don't have to look this one up on the internet.
Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting too, like this gate 15 is one of those cusp energies, right? It has a couple days in Gemini, which is this um mutable air energy, airy energy, and then it has a couple days in this Cancer, this cardinal water, right? So within its own energy, it has somewhat of extremes right there, right? And it's this thing about finding this balance, this moving into, and in the human design mandala, we're moving into a new eighth of the wheel, where we've just been in the bottom trigram of all of the gates were earth gates, that earthy Taurus energy that we started out with back in Taurus, and now we're entering into the mountain trigram, which is about stillness, right? And we see this in nature too, just like you said, right? We had this thunder arousing energy at the beginning of spring. We move into the earth, getting grounded, planting for the thing. And now that things are planted, now we're staying still, right? Now we're watching and waiting, right? And so this gate of extremes is an interesting opening to that energy, right? Like that full spectrum, and then jumping or sitting actually with stillness, right? And just waiting in this mountain, like how still and balanced can I be inside of this energy?
And yet, like in the gene keys, the shadow right now is dullness.
Mm.
And like when I was reading what Richard Rudd had to say about it, it's interesting because we look at dull as kind of still, even though it often isn't for us. And like, so how we can see the city in the shadow, but how we interact with it so differently. In looking at dullness as something that needs to go away. And like the ordinariness of life isn't good enough. And so I was thinking there was years and years ago, a book I ran across called Chop Wood, Carry Water, or Carry
Mm.
Water, Chop Wood. Interesting. I might need a bucket there. But, it's just in the mundaneness of life, right? Is because the extremes, they're not dull. They're, they get pretty exciting, even if it's not good exciting. But that ability just to be with, like, I'm doing the dishes, or I'm making the bed, or I'm out for a walk, and actually being out for a walk and being in the nature, not just you're physically there, is but people can look at that as boring because nothing's happening.
Yeah.
And yet all kinds of stuff is happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just peek under one of those logs you're passing by. There's a whole flurry of activity. Some you might be surprised to find.
Yep.
So I was thinking about the Gemmo for this, and I think, to come into balance, to come into harmony with ourself and nature, we need to reconnect. And so in that, I'm really drawn to silver line for folks for this experience. And I think it's going to lead you into the next gate of 52, which these two gates I think are so beautifully interconnected, at least the way that I'm perceiving it. And I want to say one thing about this other translation that I've been playing with, and this is R.L. Wing's I Ching translation. And the statement that goes with the hexagram 15 is: an enlightened person reduces the excessive and increases the insufficient. So that goes a lot, really, along with Richard Rudd's gene keys, because insufficient, this is where we see the dullness, right? And to, anything more could be disconnecting and extreme. So how do we increase what's needed, decrease what's too much?
And I think too, there's different types of people, where some people will get all agitated, and they're busy trying to push away the dullness and make something happen. And other people that just kind of get sort of sucked into it.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden they're a couch potato. And so being able to watch kind of which way we slide when things are feeling dull could be really, really useful. It's just like, oh, that's what's going on for me. There's nothing really wrong here. But then it's like Richard Rudd talks about, then like sitting with that dullness, not running away from it in one way or another, and seeing what it has to offer. Yeah, probably a really busy mind. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think about dullness too as just conditioning, right? Like, I mean, when you step back and you think about this planet we live on, like, how on earth would anybody, I mean, no pun intended, but how on earth would anybody find any, I mean, right? Like, nothing is dull here. Like, again, turn over a log, like Lauren said. Oh my word, there's nothing dull about what's going on in nature, right? There's nothing dull about anything, quite frankly, but we get shut down to a lot of the wonder and the awe of the world that we live in, and the wonder and the awe of ourselves, right? I mean, when you think about the fact that we exist and how we were formed in as beings, right? Like, it's crazy that a couple of cells come together and make a whole human, right? Like, there's nothing dull about anything we do on this planet, right? So I don't know. I just find it really interesting. And this extremes, like one of the things that the human design book talks about in Gate 15, particularly, it was just a term that I thought was really interesting, was the phrase was a lack of fixed pattern ensures diversity in love.
Mm.
Right? Which that just really resonated for me. Like this thing that we seem to be uncomfortable with being in extremes or being all over the place, right? Like, actually that's the thing, right? That keeps us able to create love in all of its forms, right? And that is the reason we're here, right? And so I just feel like this gate is a really beautiful gate. I'm really curious to see what will come up for us in this next few days.
Yeah, I'm super curious. because I can see it going either way, and it will. We'll experience both extremes, and I think everyone should buckle up and be ready for that. I think we'll see it out. We're already seeing signs of it out in the world that we beyond nature, in that other world that gets created for us. But I think I think this is really important to catch ourselves in this habitual. It's a habitual response to be dull. It is a shutdown. There is no way around it, and it's a habitual response to, this is too much for me out here. I don't know what to do with it. I don't know how to be comfortable just being, and so I'm just going to disconnect and be dull. So it'll be a good time to practice. Even when we think we don't slip into that, I bet we all touch on it at some point or another.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess from a polyvagal perspective, it would be a freeze state, right? I mean, essentially.
Yeah,
Or
yeah. I mean, if we're looking at the biological response, it couldn't be a dorsal because it would have to happen biologically. But I personally think we choose to fall into this state. I think it's a choice, but it's a conditioned choice that we're just no longer aware of.
interesting. Yeah. Huh.
Netflix surfing.
Yeah.
I mean,
But
there you go.
yeah, you both use the same word, and I think it's really, really important here. It's curious.
Mm,
Be
yeah,
curious.
yeah. Maybe that's the mantra for this week. Take silver line and be curious.
I love that. That's awesome. Yeah, and so we're gonna have, this gate 15, I think you're right. We're gonna have probably lots of examples, excuse me, of extremes. And hopefully we'll be able to enjoy the beautiful ones and minimize the less beautiful ones, right? And learn from them, because we have gate 52 next, which is the gate of inaction, and the I Ching is keeping still. And so I suspect that we'll have quite a bit of action the next few days, and then I suspect that the next piece after that is a chance to pull back in and contemplate what just happened. Because the energy is definitely going to be there for all of us to yeah, so like gate 52, again, like I said, just keeping still, it's in action, but it's actually in our root center, which in the human design system we think of as the center for action, for this adrenalized get up and go action, right? But this is the one gate inside of that that is exactly the opposite. It's about the energy for staying still, the fuel for being still. And so it seems a bit, counterintuitive in its own energy, but it is connected to this ability to focus deeply on what matters, right? And so I would say this next time in 52 is going to be, things have happened over the last week. What really matters here, right? And then what can I pull back on, sit with, and figure out next steps beyond that?
Yeah, because we're flooded with all kinds of like information and energy that's coming at us right now. And it goes back to the whole discernment about like what's really going on and what really matters. But this the shadow here being stress. And then I hadn't thought about it before, but that stress isn't just so much a personal thing. It's like what we're swimming in.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's just even if we could be unstressed, if what's around us is stressed, it's going to impact us. So being able to recognize that first right off the bat, I think can make things different for people.
Well, and we benefit from the new moon in Cancer just as this gate begins. So if we could step into that Cancer energy and have that safe container that we can experience, and then it's sort of like putting ourselves off in the grandstand of whatever nonsense is going on down here. So for myself, I think that's a good visualization I would like to hold, but then it's followed very quickly with Mercury and in Leo, and there's going to be a lot of noise with that. There is, and we're going to hear more from Anastasia as she goes into Cancer season on the next recording. So I want to suggest folks to make time for that, because I think that's what it is. I'm up in the grandstand. Can I hold still here? Oh my gosh, look what's going on down there. And just practicing that. In the I Ching, the request is to this is the time to practice your meditation. This is the time to practice breath work. And if you've never done it before, I personally think the energy is going to be there to support a new practice.
Yeah. Well, the gift in the Gene Key is restraint, right? And so this is the thing. There's this fuel from the root to want to move, right? But there's also in this one gate, this one energy, there's this push to stop, this push to stay still, this push to pause, right? So being restrained in our actions, even if stuff is going on in our head, right? Like even if we're really thinking something needs to happen or whatever, this energy is really supporting us in saying no, right? And saying, nope, I'm not gonna say anything right now. I'm just gonna wait, right? And this is one of the hardest things we really do, I think, as people, is wait. We're not good waiters, it's not our thing. And so we've had this, like, we've got this gate 12 divine timing, right? We've got gate 15, things are going on. And, it's like several of these gates in a row are asking us to be paying attention to this timing, right? This holding, not withholding, but holding ourselves back from jumping, even though we feel this pressure to do that.
It's sort of like holding. Oh, sorry, Lois, go ahead.
Oh, I was just thinking like about this holding back in that. I mean, there's things that we can do for ourselves to sort of help us to function above that frequency, like on the balcony. But there's almost like a need for support around us in that. So who we surround ourselves with is going to make a big difference. So if we're spending all of our time downloading all of the nonsense that's coming at us, we're going to feel really agitated and stressed. But if we can spend some time with people like we're spending today, and sort of absorb that, feel that, and get used to it, and we can then take it with us and hope that it lasts, at least for a few hours out there.
Lois, you gave me such a great picture. Thank you for this, because I'm thinking about the grandstands, and I'm also thinking, it doesn't matter if you're at the opera or you're at a ball game. There are these areas where you can book for a whole group. I don't know, they're called boxes, right? And the royalty sits in the box when they watch the ballet, right? Like, who do you want to invite into your viewing box? And you two are on my list for sure. And I know there's a lot of people that aren't. And I think we have to be really aware of that. Our energy is so sacred and precious and vulnerable to what it's exposed to. And so with that, I'm super excited about these two gates. I think there's so much for us to learn. And I think there's so much nonsense that's going to be portrayed for us that we've almost reached a point where we'll see it's nonsense. It's all charades and play acting. Unfortunately, people lose their lives in that. And that is not to be taken lightly. And it's all theater. So separating ourselves, pulling ourselves back is important. And how are we going to do that? We're going to breathe. And Lithi is the extract that's going to help you breathe. I have the greatest role model in my life was my father-in-law. And he would sit in the middle of a family gathering and there would literally chaos everywhere. And he would be so still that you almost wouldn't believe he was still alive. And I would say, hey, Kurt, what are you doing? And he would say, just breathing, Lauren, just breathing. And so I'm going to be thinking about Kurt as I go into this gate. I think we all should find someone that we can uphold as our model of what it's like to just breathe.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really beautiful. I love that. The dilemma in the gene keys is this shallow breathing for gate 52, right? Like how amazing that that's what you came around to because again, like this is part of what we're doing in the collective, right? And this is the other aspect of these gates, gate 15 and gate 52 are both collective energies in the design, in the human design. And so collective energies are, again, these transpersonal energies. Like how are we ourselves interacting with the collective? What is it that we can share with the collective? It's a very sharing energy. And we know as a collective right now, we are all shallow breathing when we are not intentionally in groups of people where we are taking those deep, deep breaths and trying to coordinate our breathing, right? Those and we've all been in those spaces. We know that there's something profound in those spaces. But in our day-to-day, we're not in those spaces, right? We are alongside other people and we're all shallow breathing. And it is not great for our health, right? And it's not great for our sharing of energy either, right? And so this maybe is a real opportunity to be more mindful of that in this space and just keep our own breathing as deep as possible, right?
I wonder how that relates to those. I was reading about the Schumann and the 7.8 megahertz
Oh,
being
the
so,
Schumann resonance,
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's sort of like when we get away from that, either too slow or too fast, that we're out of alignment.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we're all busy like rushing forward all the time and like a bunch of lemmings, no, don't know where we're going, but
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
cute. They're cute though.
They are quite cute until they jump off the cliff and then they're no longer.
Whoops.
Well, it's interesting you say that, Lois. I just sent out a thing to my list of folks the other day about this thing about the speed at which modern life goes, right? And we think it's normal that you're with your kid at 6 a.m. and then you get in a car and you drive 70 miles an hour, 50 miles away to get into a building with air conditioning and other people that are all, now I would say, shallow breathing, right? But like our bodies aren't made to understand that. Like that's nonsensical to our body, right? And yet this is our norm, right? Everybody now is doing that. And so it just makes me think about like this disconnection to our own, quite frankly, to our own inaction, right? Like we don't have much space where we're being still anymore. Not only are we not still, we're at the friggin' speed of light compared to what humans are supposed to be traveling at, right?
Mhm.
amazing.
Yeah. I think we got to that space again, Lois.
I think we did. And it's all so sudden. It's interesting. All right. So thank you for being with us, and we hope we see you next time.